So actually, two things which I could generate from the moments of truth is one, delegating. Delegating is one of the key principles in servant leadership, and now you are comfortable in, as I understand, now you're more comfortable in a servant leadership style. You can delegate work to build trust. When you said, I'm going around and talking to the people, to what will you do in this case? You were telling that example earlier. Actually, you were actually trying to delegate it, and that delegation actually creates an environment, design an environment for results type thing, and it is the delegation. And first one is a typical example of empathy, where you actually step into others' shoes to see what is. And I want you to a little bit elaborate on one thing. In the first story, you were saying that servant leadership doesn't mean that you should not get out of the rules, or being just allowing everybody to do whatever they want to do. That is not servant leadership. People think that serving is just like let us praise everybody, or things like that.
Yes.
Or behaviors which are not appropriate are encouraged because we don't want to create no friction. But actually, in servant leadership, as I'm reading and as I'm trying to know more people, I think they love to create friction for a process of understanding yourself, or inventing yourself, mentoring them to achieve greater heights, telling them this is not right, you have to fix it. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think when you look at a manager that won't delegate, you're looking at a selfish motive. You're looking at the fact that they're not developing their people. How is a person supposed to be fulfilled in their work if they're not giving anything purposeful to do? Yep. It's hard. It's hard for analyticals to delegate because they know they got a certain way they want it done, and it's hard to delegate. Yeah. But still, we have to delegate, because how are we going to train? I'm a big believer in succession planning. How am I going to develop a successor if I can't delegate and start giving them the ownership of tasks that need to be done? And as opposed to the person who is insecure in their leadership role, and they won't delegate, they won't teach because of the fear that this person may one day take their job. And so it's a complete paradigm shift from the idea of self-preservation to realizing that, one, by developing people, I feel much better about myself. But also at the end of the day, by developing people, you will find that these people who develop other people do end up being more successful.
And in that line, there's a question of persuasion comes.
Yes.
In the persuasion, when you're talking about persuasion, it is not using the authority to make people work or make people do things. But it's more like a coercion, more like a consensus, where you end up talking to people, being open to people. What is that experience? How is your experience as a servant leader in persuasions?
That was one of the things that did not come naturally for me. When we go back to that very first question of was it natural? That was absolutely not natural for me. That is something that had to be taught. It starts with humility. First, I have to take my stuff down and humble myself. But the idea of and I think it's very important to understand that authority still needs to exist, but that's not the root. That's not your motivator. Even before, once again, I came across the concept of servant leadership, I'd realized something about managers, that there was two types of respect. One is the respect for the title, which is unearned. You're my manager, therefore I have to respect you whether I want to or not. And then there's the respect that is earned. Once again, the successful manager versus the unsuccessful manager. The successful manager earns that respect. They're the ones that don't do things by authority alone. They do things with persuasion. And not only persuasion, but also in some cases, the willingness to admit that that maybe my idea wasn't the best. So, and once again, the manipulator who goes in and say, give me your ideas. And then you give them all the ideas and they say, okay, here's what we're going to do, which was none of your ideas. You know, that's the manipulator who says, oh, okay, I want to give you a say-so, but you're really not going to have a say-so. You know, the true servant leader is going to approach this with not just the idea that I need to persuade you to get buy-in so you buy into my idea. It's also, and it just keeps coming back to listening, it's also that I'm going to listen to you and you may have an idea that's better. Or you may have a concern about that idea that I had not considered. So it is about a persuasive versus authoritative, but it's also about a humility, a level of humility to say, you know, sometimes your ideas may be better than mine.
Absolutely. And it actually raises the question, how is foresight helps you, or the intuition helps you in servant leadership?
It's, I believe it's important. I think it's missing in many. I think that's one of the key factors that's missing in a lot of cases. But and especially in a time of crisis, what do we do in a time of crisis? We respond.
Right.
We respond to the crisis. We don't think about. And that is one of the things I truly that experience as a manager at that MHMR center, where it was a crisis, seemingly every day was a crisis, taught me to recognize this is what the crisis is. This is what I need to do more proactively to make sure these crises don't continue to pop up. And that was the key thing. That was one of my biggest key takeaways from that job. Foresight, proactive solutions versus a response to a crisis will prevent the crisis or prevent the crisis mindset. You can't, maybe we couldn't have prevented COVID, but what we can do is we can prepare ourselves better for the next event such as this so we are more mentally ready. That's the foresight.
Even though it is not very clearly mentioned in any of the servant leadership that I read till now, I think there is an element of learning. And that is not clearly, I couldn't clearly get it. But I think especially in the crisis period, I think the learning part, as a servant leader, you should be able to codify or make notes of what went right and what went wrong. And that can help to, I won't say prevent completely, at least reduce the risk when a crisis occurs in the future. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would completely agree. Learning being more than just an academia, learning life's lessons. There is a notion of people are writing things, and after last year, people are really starting to rethink what they write, and we're going to have a lot of new information coming out. That learning is good, but we also have our experiences, and a person who doesn't learn from their mistakes or learn from the mistakes of others, those who, what is it? I think there's a quote that says, "Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it." So the learning, I can say for myself, the lessons learned as a manager, which includes failures, and failures and positives, both. You learn through those experiences, and you say, "Yes, this is the manager I want to be." I was discussing this with a colleague earlier. When you are being managed, you're watching, whether you realize it or not, you're observing the people that are supervising you, that are managing you, and you're looking at this manager who did not motivate you at all, who had no connection with at all, and saying essentially, "I don't want to be like that one."
Yeah.
And then you're looking at this one over here that you connected with well, and they motivated you well, and you felt you enjoyed going to work and everything like that. And you start looking at these things, and you're starting to develop yourself. What you're doing is you're developing your own leadership style for that day when you get that opportunity. And so as I've been led, more so, I think more so than by leading, but watching how I've been led is how I've learned. This is the learning curve in which I've decided, yes, this is how I want to lead. This is because this is what has motivated myself.
And I started this whole discussion by saying that there should be the shift of leadership for looking for financial results, rather than that you should be focusing on designing an environment that create results. And I think you also, your whole interview also justifies the fact that this is true, because we have to create environments for people to be successful. You have created an environment where people seems motivated, learning, and continuously producing. So thank you very much for the interview today. So what is your final few takeaways for the future managers who aspire to be servant leaders?
Once again, I go back to the very thing that you mentioned of learning. But the first thing we have to do is, once again, self-assess. Do I have a love and respect for others that's authentic, that's genuine? That to me is your foundation. If you don't have a love and respect for others that's authentic, servant leadership will never take. So do a self-assessment. Do I have respect and love for others? And from there, am I willing to humble myself to be a servant to others? And through that humility and through that love and respect for others, you're going to build the trust, that key foundational piece that you can to lead others. And through that, and when you have people buying in to who you are, the way you lead, they're going to begin buying into your ideals more. And through that, I believe success will happen.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. And this will be a very useful thing for the community to know more about you, to know what servant leadership is and how it can produce results. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.